The first time the Alpha pirate captain saved my life, I hated him for it. The second time, I wasn't sure if I wanted him to stop. The sea had always been cruel, but that night it seemed to have chosen me as its favorite victim. Salt spray stung my eyes as waves the size of houses hurled our ship into the air, then dropped us with bone-cracking force. I clung to the mast, my breath ragged, my heart pounding not from the storm, but from the way his voice cut through the chaos. "Stay with me, boy." Captain Reese's roar carried over the wind, deep and commanding, like it had the power to drag the ship back from the abyss. His coat snapped in the gale, his eyes locked on me as if he could keep me alive by sheer will. I was no ordinary sailor. I was an Omega delicate in the eyes of most, fragile in the minds of all. But I hadn't joined this crew to be coddled. I joined to prove I could stand on my own, even in a world where alphas like Reese ruled the seas. And I despised him for the way he always seemed to see through that armor. When the wave hit, I went under. I remember the taste of brine and the violent drag of the ocean pulling me down, until a hand seized my collar and yanked me back into the world. His face was the first thing I saw when I surface-soaked, furious, alive. "I told you not to be on deck," he barked, his grip firm on my arm. "You're not my keeper." I shot back, coughing. But my voice was weaker than I wanted. Reese's gaze flickered, something unreadable there before it hardened again. "You'll thank me later." The storm that night was only the beginning. For weeks, the waters off the Carolina coast had been alive with whispers, naval blockades tightening, pirate crews turning on one another, betrayal brewing in the salt air. Our ship, the Black Seraph, had sailed straight into a war neither side wanted to name. And I, Elias, the Omega who had no business surviving this long, was caught between loyalty to a crew that had taken me in and the Alpha captain whose every word made me burn with both fury and something I refused to name. Reese was ruthless in battle, but in private moments, I caught glimpses of a man worn down by something heavier than the sea. At night, when the crew drank themselves into oblivion, I'd see him at the bow, staring out at the horizon like he was waiting for someone who'd never return. I should have ignored him. I should have kept my head down. But the more I learned, the less he felt like the villain I'd painted him to be. It all changed the night the Navy cornered us in the inlet. Cannon fire split the air, smoke rolled across the deck, and the crew scrambled to return fire. I was hauling powder barrels below deck when a blast sent me sprawling. Pain seared my side, but before I could even curse, Reese was there, shoving me behind the mast. "Stay down, Elias." His voice was raw, desperate. "I can fight," I protested. "Not if you're dead." He grabbed my face ruff, calloused hands trembling ever so slightly. His eyes searched mine, as if he was about to say something, but the roar of another cannon cut him off. He pulled away, shouting orders, his body moving like a storm-given flesh. By dawn, we'd barely escaped. The crew cheered their victory, but I couldn't shake the memory of his touch, the crack in his voice, the way he'd looked at me like I was more than just a sailor. Then came the night of the great storm. It wasn't the Navy chasing us this time, it was nature herself, tearing at our sails, bending the masts, screaming through the rigging. Lightning lit the deck in flashes, and in one of those blinding moments, Reese found me. He was soaked to the bone, his hair plastered to his face, his chest heaving. "Elias!" he shouted over the wind. "If we don't make it through this," he broke off, closing the distance between us until the rain became the only witness. His hand cupped my cheek, warm even in the freezing storm. "I have to tell you," he said, voice breaking. "I've been fighting the wrong battles. I thought I was fighting for my ship, for my crew, but it's you. It's always been you." My breath caught. "Reese." Lightning struck somewhere far too close, but neither of us moved. The ship groaned beneath us, the world tilted, and still, his eyes stayed locked on mine. "I don't know if you can forgive the things I've done," he said, "but I need you to know if we live through this, I'm yours. No more running. No more hiding." For the first time, I realized I wasn't sure whose side I was on anymore, because maybe the only thing I wanted to protect was standing right in front of me. The storm did not kill us, but it took everything else. When the sun finally clawed its way over the horizon, the Black Seraph was no longer the proud beast she'd been. Her masts were splintered, sails in ribbons, hull leaking just enough to make every man pray with each creak of wood. Half the crew was gone, washed overboard or claimed by the night. And yet, somehow, Reese and I had made it to shore. I woke on a bed of wet sand, my lungs aching, my head pounding. The first thing I saw was him kneeling beside me, his coat gone, his hair tangled and dripping. He was breathing hard, not from exhaustion, but from the panic that still clung to him. "You're alive," he whispered, like it was the first time he'd allowed himself to believe it. His hand hovered over mine, then finally settled, warm and grounding. I should have said something sharp, something to keep the walls between us. But I didn't. Not anymore. We found what was left of the crew huddled under a cliff, their loyalty fractured like the ship's mast. A few muttered about Reese's leadership, about how the storm had been an omen. Others looked at me with suspicion as if my presence had shifted the tides. And then came the offer. A Navy cutter had survived the same storm and anchored nearby. Their lieutenant approached under a flag of truce, promising safety to any man willing to leave piracy behind. No trial, no gallows, just a clean slate on American soil. It was a miracle offer. For me, it was everything I'd ever wanted. A chance to step off this blood-soaked path and finally live without fear. But taking it meant leaving Reese to whatever fate the sea had left for him. When the lieutenant turned to Reese, he laughed, sharp and bitter. "A pirate's pardon? I've seen enough gallows to know a rope when I smell it." Pulled him aside. "You could come with me," I said quietly. He shook his head, eyes dark. "And give up the only life I've ever known?"
No, Elias.
"This ship what's left of Harris, my home." He swallowed. "But you could be free." Freedom. The word felt hollow now. I thought of the storm, of his confession, of the way his hand had steadied me when the world tried to tear me apart. And I realized freedom without him wasn't freedom at all. So I made my choice. When the Navy boat came for the willing, I stayed where I was, standing beside Reese in the sand. The lieutenant gave me a long, puzzled look before turning away. Reese stared at me like I'd just done the impossible. "Elias, why?" "Because I'm done running," I said, my voice steady. "You said you were mine if we lived through the storm. Well, we're still breathing. So I'm holding you to it." For the first time since I'd known him, Reese didn't have an answer. He just pulled me into his arms, the smell of salt and smoke between us, the beat of his heart a steady drum against my ear. We spent the next days repairing what we could of the Black Seraph. The crew was smaller now, quieter, but something had shifted. Reese wasn't just their captain anymore, was mine. And I was his in every way the sea allowed. One evening, as the sun sank into the horizon, Reese stood beside me at the bow, the water calm as glass. He took my hand without looking, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "Still don't know who you're fighting for?" he asked softly. I smiled, leaning into him. "Oh, I know now. And it's not for the ship. It's not for the crew. It's for us." The ocean stretched out before Usenless, dangerous, beautiful. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of where it might take me. Because wherever we went, we'd go together. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.